Lead scientist Veteran was 3 hours into his shift when the alarm started, screaming, and honestly he wished they had stayed quiet for the past 6 cycles. Monitoring Sol 3 had been the galactic equivalent of watching paint dry, except the paint was a bunch of hairless apes who had just figured out how to split atoms without immediately vaporizing themselves. Progress sure, but nothing worth writing home about. The observation station orbited peacefully, and the outer system sensors pointed at the little blue marble, recording data that nobody would ever read because frankly nobody cared. Veteran had been enjoying his morning stimulant, pondering whether he could fake a medical emergency to get reassigned somewhere anywhere else when every electromagnetic sensor on the station lit up like a festival display. The energy signature was wrong, very wrong. He choked on his drink, purple liquid spraying across 3 monitors as his secondary hands frantically pulled up the analysis screens. His primary hands were already shaking. That reading, it could not be right. The primitive humans down there, the ones who still used combustion engines and thought nuclear fission was peak technology, had just activated something that made his scales itch with recognition and dread. Junior researcher Plixon burst through the lab doors, his breathing apparatus wheezing with exertion. The kid was fresh out of the academy, still excited about field work, still believed monitoring primitive species was romantic. That innocence was about to die a horrible death. Sir, I have triple-checked the readings, Plixon announced, his voice cracking slightly. The electromagnetic surge originated from their military testing facility in what they call New Mexico. Veteran did not look up from his screen. He was too busy recalculating the numbers, praying to 16 different deities that his instruments were malfunctioning. They were not. Systems analyst Cora slithered over her serpentine body, coiling around her workstation with practiced ease. She had been monitoring galactic transmissions for 2 centuries and had seen exactly 3 things that genuinely surprised her. This was about to be number 4. Let me guess, Corvus, her forked tongue tasting the air nervously. The energy signature matches a railgun configuration. The current finally looked up, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a nervous tick he had developed during the last crisis. Not just any railgun, a functional military-grade ship, killer-class railgun. The room went silent except for the humming of processors working overtime. Flick's skin shifted from healthy blue to a sickly green. That is impossible. According to the Galactic Development Index, species do not achieve magnetic acceleration weaponry until they have mastered faster than light travel. The progression is always the same: chemical propellants, plasma containment, energy conversion, then and only then the electromagnetic launch systems. Tell that to the humans, Corvus muttered, pulling up a comparison chart. The Valiants took 47,000 years to go from gunpowder to railguns. The Cortex Collective needed 32,000. The Zendari, those overachieving scaled bastards, managed it in 18,000. The current pulled up Earth's timeline, the data making his headache worse with every passing second. Humans invented gunpowder roughly 1,000 of their years ago. They are currently in year 2025 of their primary calendar system. Flick did the math, his analytical brain refusing to accept the result. That means they went from primitive chemical weapons to electromagnetic mass drivers in Basically, nothing in evolutionary terms. Correct, the current said flatly already, composing his resignation letter in his head, and if my readings are accurate, their test firing achieved 0.08% light speed. Corvus scales rippled with undisguised fear. We are so screwed. Current communication request to Commander Thalys was answered in 0.3 seconds, which told him everything he needed to know. The flagship sensors had picked up the same readings, and someone up the chain of command was already having a very bad day. Thalys materialized on the hollow screen, his crystalline face structure reflecting light in sharp, angry patterns. Please tell me your equipment is broken. Vakarin, I wish I could, sir. I really wish I could. The commander's form flickered with irritation. Explain. Use small words. I have a council meeting in 10 minutes, and I need to tell them why a species that just invented the internet is suddenly potential threat to galactic security. Vakarin pulled up the technical readouts, organizing his thoughts. Railguns, as the humans apparently call them, use electromagnetic rails to accelerate a conductive projectile to extreme velocities. The concept is simple, elegant even, which is precisely why it should not exist yet. You need advanced material science to handle the thermal stress, sophisticated power management systems to regulate the energy flow, and computational modeling to calculate trajectory compensation for relativistic effects. And the humans have all of this? Thalys asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Apparently so. Their projectile reached approximately 24,000 km per second. For context, that is fast enough to cross their entire planetary diameter in half a second. The kinetic energy alone could punch through our standard cruiser shielding like it was tissue paper. Core chimed in from her station, her voice dripping with sarcasm that would have got her reprimanded under normal circumstances. Oh, it gets better, Commander. They are using this technology without having unified their planetary government, without achieving sustainable fusion power, and this is my favorite part. While still arguing whether climate is changing, Thalys was silent for exactly 4 seconds. Then he uttered a phrase in Old Crystalline that roughly translated to a very creative suggestion about what the universe could do with itself. Emergency council session now. Get your data compiled. 20 minutes later, Vakarin found himself presenting to an assembled group of very unhappy officials via holoconference. Military advisor Krell, a massive armored being who had fought in 6 wars and survived 3 extinction events, looked like he wanted to shoot something. Xenobiologist Nemara, whose species had been studying behavioral patterns for millennia, kept making small chittering sounds that Vakarin recognized as her people's version of nervous laughter. Let me understand this correctly, Krell rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. A species that still kills each other over imaginary lines on maps has created a weapon that could theoretically destroy our warships. That is correct, sir. A species that has not left their own solar system. Also correct. Species that we classified as barely sentient 50 cycles ago because they were still burning fossil fuels for energy. Vakarin nodded miserably. You are understanding the situation perfectly. Advisor Nemara finally stopped chittering long enough to speak. This raises an important question. Are humans genuinely intelligent enough to have developed this technology through normal progression, or are they simply insane enough to skip every safety protocol and conventional wisdom that every other species has followed? Does it matter? Cora interjected from the observation station. The result is the same. They have a weapon that works. Krell's armor plates shifted, a sign of deep contemplation. Intelligence can be reasoned with. Insanity is unpredictable. I need to know which one we are dealing with. The Lawaz crystalline face somehow managed to look tired. I vote for both. These are humans we are talking about. The council chamber fell silent because nobody could actually argue with that assessment. Nemara pulled up the first contact protocol files because apparently someone needed to remind the council how species development was supposed to work. And GT, you know, the normal way. And GT, the way that did not involve giving everyone in the room stress-induced organ failure, according to standard galactic progression models. She began her tangles, manipulating the holographic display. A species starts with basic tool use: rocks, sticks, sharp objects. For hunting, this phase typically lasts 5 to 10,000 years. Krill grunted. My people use stone hammers for 12,000 years before we figured out metallurgy. Exactly. Then comes metalworking, which leads to basic mechanical weapons. Swords, spears, early projectile weapons using tension or torsion. Another 10,000 years, give or take. Namara's display showed a nice gentle curve of technological advancement. Chemical propellants arrive next: gunpowder, explosives, firearms. This is where things get interesting, because now the species can actually hurt themselves efficiently. Most societies spend 15 to 20,000 years in this phase learning important lessons about not blowing themselves up. Vekarin was already pulling up humanity's timeline, a grin spreading across his face that was absolutely not appropriate for a professional scientific briefing. He did not care. Humans invented gunpowder in approximately 850 AD, he announced cheerfully, his tone suggesting he was about to ruin everyone's day even further. They currently have rail guns in 2025 AD. That is 1,175 years. Klexon, who had been quietly running calculations, looked up with genuine confusion. Sir, that cannot be right. My math shows they went from basic firearms to electromagnetic launch systems in roughly 400 years. Oh, it gets worse, Vekarin continued, clearly enjoying himself now despite the existential horror of it all. They went from their first powered flight to landing on their own moon in 66 years. 66. My species took 8,000 years to achieve orbital flight after inventing the wheel. Cora slithered closer to the display, her eyes widening. Wait. They achieved nuclear fission in 1945, nuclear fusion in 1952, and now functional railguns in 2025. They speed ran the entire energy to weapons pipeline in 80 years. Thales crystalline structure was flickering rapidly, a sign of deep distress. Raelians spent 30,000 years perfecting plasma containment before they even considered magnetic acceleration. The humans just skipped that entire step. Oh no, they have plasma weapons 2, Vekarin said, pulling up another file. They just decided plasma was not fast enough, so they went back to throwing solid objects, but really hard. Nemara made that chittering Sound again. This is like watching a toddler skip crawling and walking and go straight to parkour while on fire, while juggling antimatter, Krill's armor. Plating rattled, which his species did, when they were either very angry or very impressed, possibly both. Let me understand the human approach to technological development. They encounter a problem, they apply the most violent solution possible, and then they optimize that violence until physics starts crying. That is horrifyingly accurate. Vekarin agreed. I have been reviewing their scientific literature. Do you know what their primary innovation driver is? Not survival, not efficiency, not even resource acquisition. What then? Thalas asked, though his tone suggested he was not sure. He wanted to know. Spite, improving people wrong, and I quote from one of their research papers, seeing if we can make it go faster. Vekarin displayed a human military document on screen. This Railgun project was apparently started because one human engineer said it was impossible, and another human engineer took that personally. The council sat in stunned silence. They weaponized pettiness, Korra whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of horror and grudging respect. They weaponized everything. Vekarin corrected. I found a human academic paper titled Theoretical Applications of Kinetic Bombardment. Using telephone poles, they wanted to drop metal rods from orbit, just rods. No explosives, just gravity and spite. Krell leaned back in his seat, his massive frame somehow looking smaller. We are monitoring a species that looks at the fundamental forces of the universe and asks how to turn them into weapons. Welcome to my last 6 cycles, Vekarin said dryly. Now you understand why I started drinking before noon. The council was still processing the historical data when every sensor on Vekarin's station started screaming again. This time the alarms were louder, angrier, and somehow sounded personally offended by what they were detecting. They are firing again, Vekarin announced, his voice climbing several octaves higher than he intended. Full power test. This is not a drill. People, the humans are actually doing it. Thalas immediately ordered all observation assets focused on the testing site. Within seconds, 17 different sensor arrays from 4 different ships were pointed at a patch of desert in North America, recording every microscopic detail of what was about to become a very bad day for physics. The human facility was ugly. All concrete and metal scaffolding, the kind of rushed military construction that screamed, we built this fast because we want to break something. At the center sat the railgun itself, a massive assembly of copper rails and superconducting magnets that looked like someone had taken a particle accelerator and decided it needed to be angry. Energy buildup detected, Korra reported, her voice tight. They are charging the capacitor banks. Power levels are oh, sweet merciful void. Those readings cannot be right. Confirm them anyway, Vekarin ordered, his hands flying across the controls. Confirmed. They are pumping 9 megajoules into the system. Clicks on skin had gone from green to a shade of purple that Vekarin had never seen before on his species. Sir, that is enough energy to power a small city for a day. They are putting it all into one shot because subtlety is apparently not a human trait, Vekarin muttered. The railgun fired. For 0.003 seconds, nothing happened. Then the sensors registered an electromagnetic pulse so intense that it temporarily blinded two of their observation satellites. The projectile, a solid tungsten dart, weighing approximately 3 kg, accelerated down the rails at a rate that made Vecran's brain hurt. Velocity at rail exit is no, that is recheck those numbers, Cora stammered, her serpentine body coiling tightly around her station. In what her species did when terrified. 23,914 km per second, the computer announced, helpfully in a calm voice that was absolutely inappropriate for the situation. Klickson fainted, just straight up collapsed onto the floor, his breathing apparatus making sad, wheezing sounds. That is 8% light speed, Cora shrieked, her voice breaking into 3 different languages simultaneously. 2 of those languages were supposedly extinct, which meant fear had literally resurrected dead tongues just to provide adequate cursing capacity. The projectile covered the 300 km to the target range in 0.012 seconds. The impact was visible from orbit, not because of explosives. There were no explosives, but because a 3 kg projectile moving at 8% light speed does not need explosives, it just needs to touch something. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to approximately 2 tons of chemical explosives. The target, a reinforced concrete bunker that could have withstood a direct nuclear blast, simply ceased to exist. It did not explode, it did not shatter. It evaporated into a cloud of superheated vapor and fundamental regret. Mother of crystals, Tholis whispered, his entire body dimming with shock. Crow, the military advisor who had seen weapons that could crack planets, who had commanded fleets through 3 major wars, sat perfectly still for exactly 10 seconds. Then he reached over and very deliberately deleted a file from his personal console. What was that? Namara asked. My tactical doctrine for engaging primitive species, Krell said flatly. It is worthless now, all of it. 17,000 years of military theory and strategic planning invalidated by a species that still uses paper money. They turned a metal stick into a kinetic planet. Cracker, Cora said, her voice hollow. She was still cursing, but quietly now. A constant stream of profanity in the background, like a religious mantra. No plasma, no antimatter, no exotic particles, just magnets and spite. Vecran was updating the threat assessment form, his hand shaking slightly. The form had categories ranging from level 1, minor nuisance, to level 10, extinction level threat. Humanity had been classified as level 2, potentially problematic but mostly harmless. He stared at the options, then created a new category, level 11, kinetically enhanced insanity. Sir, that is not a valid threat category, the computer protested. It is now, Vecran snapped. File it under new classifications, subsection we are all going to die. Klickson was regaining consciousness on the floor, mumbling something about wanting to transfer to botanical survey duty. Anywhere there were plants, nice, safe, non-weaponized plants. They are celebrating, Neymara reported, watching the intercepted human communications. The engineering team is, according to this transmission, very pleased with the test. They are planning to scale up. Phillies repeated slowly. They want to make it bigger, faster actually, Namara corrected. Their next goal is 10% light speed. Krell stood up, his massive armored form somehow looking defeated. I need to go recalculate our entire defensive strategy, and possibly find a new career. Does anyone need a mediocre poet? I have been practicing. Nobody laughed because, honestly, switching to poetry seemed like a reasonable response to what they had just witnessed. Nemara spent the next hour attempting to explain human psychology to a room full of aliens who were rapidly losing faith in the concept of intelligent design. She pulled up intercepted communications from Earth, social media posts, scientific papers, and what humans called memes, which were apparently how their civilization actually communicated complex ideas through pictures with text. Okay, so I have been studying human behavioral patterns since we started monitoring them. Nemara began her tendrils, organizing files with practiced efficiency, and I think I have identified the core problem. The problem is they are insane. Cora offered from her station where she was still occasionally cursing in dead languages. No, well, yes, but specifically, humans do not require logical justification for technological development. Watch this. Nemara displayed an intercepted conversation between two human engineers from the Railgun project. Engineer 1: why are we building this? Engineer 2: because it is cool. Engineer 1: fair enough. The council stared at the translation. That is it? Thalos asked. That is their entire decision-making process. Not entirely, Nemara said, pulling up more file. Sometimes they also use because we can, because someone said we could. Not, and my personal favorite for science, that last one appears to justify approximately 40% of their questionable decisions. Vakran leaned forward, his headache intensifying. Let me understand this. The galactic standard for weapons development is careful analysis of efficiency, resource optimization, and strategic doctrine. Humans develop weapons because they think it sounds fun, correct, but it gets more interesting. Nemara displayed a comparison chart. Most galactic species pursued energy weapons because they are elegant, plasma is clean, efficient, and can be scaled based on available power. Particle beams are precise, directed energy requires less ammunition mass. These are logical progressions. Krell nodded slowly. My people spent 12,000 years perfecting plasma containment because it was the obvious next step after chemical propellants. Why waste energy accelerating mass when you can just project the energy directly? Exactly. That is the rational approach. Numara pulled up human military forums, and the translations made several council members wince. Humans looked at that same logic tree and said, quote, that is for cowards who cannot appreciate the beauty of throwing heavy things really fast. Plexen, who had recovered enough to sit upright, raised a shaky hand. But energy weapons are objectively superior in most combat scenarios. Less mass to carry, infinite ammunition if you have power generation, precise damage control. Tell that to humans, Numara said, displaying a human military analysis document. They ran the numbers. They know energy weapons are more efficient, they just do not care. According to this paper, and I quote, kinetic weapons have the advantage of being very simple, very reliable, and very scary because everyone understands getting hit by a fast rock. Declan started laughing, a slightly unhinged sound that made everyone uncomfortable. They chose the stupid option. They chose the option that works, Numara corrected. Which is somehow worse. Look at this. Comparative analysis, she displayed 2 weapon systems side by side, our standard plasma rifle, 17 moving parts. Requires exotic materials, needs regular calibration sensitive to electromagnetic interference, effective. Range of 800 m. She switched to the human design. Human railgun, 4 major components, uses common materials. Calibration optional, works in any environment including vacuum, effective. Range limited only by targeting computers and planetary curvature. Cora scales rippled with reluctant admiration. They brute force the problem, they brute force everything. Nemura agreed. I have been reviewing their entire technological history. When they could not make their aircraft faster, they did not develop better materials or more efficient engines. First, they just strapped bigger engines to the same airframe until it worked. When their rockets kept exploding, they did not redesign them. They made the explosions more controlled and called it propulsion. Thales' crystalline form was flickering rapidly. This explains so much about their development curve. They are not smarter than us, they are just willing to try stupid things until stupid things work, and here is the crisis point. Dak Kren said, his voice taking on a manic edge. We, the Galactic Council, representing 473 species across 8,000 star systems, have spent literally millions of years developing technology. The right way, the elegant way, the efficient way. He gestured at the screen, showing the smoking crater where the human test target used to exist, and these barely civilized primates who still eat food by burning it, who measure things in feet and inches, who argue about whether their planet is round, just proved that throwing metal sticks really hard is a valid military strategy that our shields cannot stop. Krell's armor plates were rattling. Again, I have been a military strategist. For 300 years, I have studied every major conflict in recorded galactic history, and I just watched a human engineer with a degree from something called MIT invalidate my entire career with magnets and a tungsten rod. The worst part, Nemura added, pulling up another human communication, is that they know exactly what they are doing. Look at this message from their project lead. The translation appeared on screen. We are aware that rail guns are technically inferior to directed energy weapons in most metrics, however, and this is important, rail guns are significantly funnier. The council sat in silence. Funnier, Thales repeated. They are making military decisions based on humor, Cora said, her voice distant. They are winning an arms race against species millions of years older than them because they think kinetic bombardment is hilarious. Vekran stood up, his movements jerky with barely suppressed panic. I need everyone to understand something. We have based our entire understanding of galactic civilization on the assumption that intelligence leads to efficiency, that advanced species optimize rather than brute force, that there is a correct path to technological development. He pointed at Earth on the display. Those assumptions just got railgunned into a fine paste. The Emergency Council session stretched into its 4th hour, and nobody had any good news. Krell had pulled up galactic security projections, and every single model now had a new variable labeled human kinetic shenanigans with a question mark next to it. Let us talk about what this actually means, Thales said, his crystalline voice carrying the weight of someone who really did not want to have this conversation. Earth is currently classified as a pre-contact civilization, no faster than light. Capability, no unified planetary government, minimal space infrastructure, and a weapon that can punch through our cruiser shields. Krell added helpfully, yes, thank you for that reminder. Thalys pulled up the threat assessment protocols. Standard procedure for emerging technological species is observation until they achieve sustainable fusion and basic space colonization. We are looking at another 200 years minimum before official contact. Vecron shook his head, his eyes fixed on the data streaming from Earth. Sir, with respect, our timeline projections are based on normal species development. Humans are not normal at their current rate of advancement. They will have functional fusion reactors in 20 years. Not 2, and they will weaponize it immediately. Cora added from her station, I have been monitoring their entertainment media. They have at least 17 different fictional scenarios about using fusion as a weapon. They have already done the theoretical work. Nimara pulled up a cultural analysis report. Furthermore, humans have a concerning tendency toward what they call manifest destiny. They look at empty space and feel personally offended that they have not put flags in it yet. Once they achieve reliable space flight, they will expand rapidly. Krell stood up, his massive frame dominating the holographic display. Then we need to discuss intervention before they leave their system, before they start building rail guns in space where they have unlimited vacuum and no atmospheric drag to slow down their projectiles. The room went very quiet. You are suggesting preemptive action, Thalys said carefully. I am suggesting we consider all options. A species this aggressive, this technologically reckless, could destabilize the entire sector. We have protocols for this scenario. The cream felt his stomach drop. You want to quarantine them, or worse, I want to survive the next century. Krell shot back. Every simulation I run shows humans achieving space-based weapons platforms within 50 years, kinetic bombardment satellites, orbital ray guns, mass driver arrays, and they will use them because humans use everything they build. Tellus was silent for a long moment, his crystalline structure pulsing with calculation. Finally he spoke. No, Commander, no. Thalys repeated firmly, we are not becoming the monsters who destroy a species because they are too good at physics. That is not what the Council stands for. We observe, we monitor, we prepare, but we do not commit genocide because we are scared. Krell's armor plate shifted, but he sat down without further argument. However, Tellus continued, we are also not going to be stupid about this. Effective immediately. Earth's threat classification is upgraded to level 7, potentially hostile. All observation posts are to be moved to minimum safe distance, which I am defining as outside their effective weapons range. That is going to be quite far, Sir. Vecron noted. Their effective range keeps increasing. Then we keep moving. Cora, I want monitoring satellites deployed at the outer edge of their solar system, passive sensors only, nothing that could be construed as hostile. Cora nodded. Already calculating trajectories. Understood. Long-range observation, minimal profile. Nimara continue cultural analysis. I want to know everything about human decision-making processes. If we are going to eventually make contact with These people, we need to understand how they think. That assumes they think at all, Nimara muttered, but she was already compiling reports. Follows turned to Vekaran, and you lead scientists are going to prepare a comprehensive briefing for the full Galactic Council. They need to know what is coming. Vekaran looked at the data displays, at the smoking crater visible from orbit, at the energy signatures that still had not fully dissipated. What is coming is humans, he said quietly, and none of us are ready for that. 3 days later, Vekaran stood before the full Galactic Council assembly of 212 species, representing the supposedly most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy. He had prepared a 70-page report with detailed analysis, statistical projections, and carefully worded recommendations. He deleted all of it and spoke from the heart instead. Honored council members, my recommendation is simple. Do not engage with humanity. Do not provoke them. Do not challenge them. And for the love of every deity anyone here worships, do not try to outweapon them. A council member from the Torthian hegemony raised a crystalline appendage. Surely you are exaggerating the threat posed by a single per-contact species. Vekaran pulled up the railgun test footage. Species looked at the fundamental laws of physics and asked how to make them hurt people. They succeeded. They are not going to stop, but what can they actually do to us? Another council member asked. That is exactly the wrong question, Vekaran said. The right question is, what will they do next? And I can answer that based on intercepted communications from their military research division. He displayed a human project proposal on the main screen. Project Orion Nuclear Pulse Propulsion. They want to use nuclear explosions as rocket fuel, Vekaran said flatly. They are going to ride atomic bombs into space because, and I quote, it would be the coolest thing ever. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Vekaran waited for silence, then submitted his final request. I am formally requesting transfer to any other observation post in the galaxy, preferably one monitoring a species that has not weaponized their own star yet. I hear Sector 47 has a nice civilization that just discovered the wheel. That sounds perfect. As he left the chamber, his data pad chirped with a new alert from Earth. Humanity announces hypersonic railgun develop of etching program. Vekaran did not even read the full report. He just updated his resume and started packing.